Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Jared Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Carroll Connection. I'm your host, Jared Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I want to take a chance to shout out my last week's episode 167 with John Sisto. He came back on the podcast for his third appearance, and he came on to talk about some of the struggles that he's been going through mentally, changing jobs, selling his business, and it was really great to hear that he wanted to come back because he saw this platform as a platform for mental health, and specifically talking about some of the success that he had in therapy and kind of advocating for that. And I really appreciated that he felt comfortable to do that and wanted to do that. I think that's kind of the overall hope that I have with this podcast, is to create a space where people feel comfortable to do that. So if you want to check out that episode, go to thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the major listening platforms. If you want to watch your podcast, go on YouTube, search The Carroll Connection or Jared M. Carroll. Should pop up right for you. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or The Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. So today, that brings me to episode 168, bringing back a guest that's been on. This is going to be the third appearance. The last appeared on episode 140. It was kind of titled AOHD, which is the content channel that he has. Bringing back one of my personal favorites, Gio. What's up, my man?
What's up, guys? What's up, bro?
Happy to have you here. You helped me with some of these cameras. Hopefully, the visuals will look a lot better when I'm editing. I know that you're going to be a lot happier when you see these get posted, because I know that's been a big thing.
Very much.
That's been a huge thing that we've talked about in between.
It's a slight improvement, right? Like,
yeah,
you work with what you got, and I think that it's a little bit better in the lighting.
Yeah, and I think it's all going to have a similar look to it, and I think that's kind of really what I was hoping for too, is to get everything kind of on the same page and see a little bit of how you kind of do your thing. Obviously, I don't have as much equipment here that you might have had in the Ever Changing Vibe studio or in like your own personal stuff, but like you said, work with what we got, and we kind of got things on a different level. You showed me a little different things about what each camera can do and the lights and how that interacts with different people, and especially myself, and being the host, the background and everything we have here. So I think it's really cool, and I think I'm able to take this and kind of run with it. I'm kind of need the template, and then you give me the template, and I could just copy and paste and do this forward. So I'm glad that you were able to, at least willing to come do this and help me kind of set this stuff up and move it forward.
Of course. Like, that's like one of the big things for like me and my friends, right? It's like, especially if, say, when it comes to content specifically, it's just, I'm excited to help my friends grow. Like some people I know that they're just like, oh yeah, make money off of it, charge them to do those things. But it's just like, no. My friends, it's just like, I want them to, like, I could, of course, but I want my friends to grow with me, right? I want my friends to understand that, like, oh yeah, you can get better if you do this, or you get better to do that. Like, and I'm sure you've heard so many times of, like, even today before we started, like, all the ideas that I'll be like, hey, by the way, here's a bunch of random ideas that you're probably not going to remember all of. Like, it's just, this is all the ideas that come out of my scalp, just pours out.
I was gonna say, yeah, and even the fact that the camera that's on you right now is heavily influenced by stuff that you told me, because I was looking for a third camera, and you were like, I came to you immediately because I just trusted you with your information, and you're like, get the R10, you have Canons, stick with the Canons, it's gonna go better with what you have, and it's been honestly flawless. I'm really happy with the quality, and that's really a testament to you and your knowledge in this space. And again, it's just like giving you your flowers for being willing to do this and willing to do that for your friends. I think that's like an applaudable action that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily do, especially when you could charge, and I would pay. Like, there is that. It's like, I also am big on supporting your friends in that aspect as well too.
Right. Now, granted, if it was editing, yeah, you're paying.
And that's why I don't ask you to edit.
But yeah, like, with stuff like this is so minor. It's just like, hey, bro, like, you can utilize, like, what you have a little bit better if you just did this, you know? And sometimes I know that it's, like, harder to, like, just listen to the word and just kind of figure it out on your own. Sometimes it's better to, visually see the difference. And so that's why I was like, I'd be down to help.
Yeah, and it was also just a great opportunity to get you back on the podcast separately from the dynamic duo of AOHD between you and Brandon, and just having Brandon in the studio is always a great time. But we had a virtual podcast the other night that we did, and it was great to see him behind a mic and us to talk and stuff like that. So it's always a great thing. But to get you separately and have a podcast with just you is always appreciated.
Yeah.
So that last episode 140, we did in about May of last year.
Mhm.
So kind of catch people up on a little bit what's happened since then, and we'll kind of just go with the podcast after that.
Sure. So since that time, we had like a little bit of a pivot because I think still in May we were still doing music, maybe.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, we completely cut that out for two reasons. Reason one, it was just like we were starting to see that like we weren't having fun with that. Like similar to this, and that's one of the things where it's just like I was talking about, like you kind of grow and like yes, you may go on here and think this might be it, but once you realize you're not having fun with it, it's like don't just stick with it because of the fact. Like no, evolve, right? And that's okay. Like it's okay to evolve. It's okay to change, right? And for us, it was the music thing. It was not fun anymore. We were listening to the songs and we weren't having fun. We were like almost kind of like not really even wanting to get in the studio because of it, but we were still having fun doing the Dragon Ball. And why is that the case? It's because like as plenty of people have probably seen at this point, like me and Wally are very goofy. Like we joke around constantly, right? So it's one of those things where it's like with the Dragon Ball that like adhered to our nature, whereas like the music, it was just one of those things where it's like we could enjoy it, whatever, but there was times where it's like we wouldn't enjoy the song, but and where I would be almost inclined to be like I'd have to like say I don't. Sometimes it's like, will this hurt the viewership if I do? Will this, and there's been times too where it's like I'll make those comments and I'll have backlash and that's okay. Like it's okay for you to be wrong, but it's it's but it's one of those things for me. It's like it's okay. You like the music, that's fine. I didn't, but it was also just I wasn't. I was falling out of love for music as a whole as well. So I was just like, let's just drop this because we both were feeling that way. And when we finally just switched full on to like more of like the anime goofy stuff, we were having way more fun, and that's where we noticed the more growth because it went literally from people showing up for that artist, and we'd have like thousands of views from people showing up for those artists, but it stopped being that and people started showing up for us, right? And like we started to notice once we switched and pivot to something that we really enjoyed, people stopped showing up just for the one thing. They would show up and new people would show up for the one thing, but people started to just stick around for us. They enjoyed our dynamic, they enjoyed what we were doing, and the conversations we like and how we were handling the content. And so and it just became this whole thing where it's like if you look at my comments nowadays, everyone's joking around. We have like inside jokes within our comments, like because people just enjoyed who we were and the back, like the dynamic between me and him, and then also me and us in the audience. So that's it. It was one of those things where it finally got us to the 1,000 subscriber goal that we were looking for, and we've at this point even passed that because I mean it's now been a month since we've hit that goal, so we're a little over that, but it was exciting to finally hit the we technically now get paid for YouTube. And now the final reason why I'm glad we stopped doing music is I found out uh I don't get paid for any of those videos.
Is it like copyright thing?
All of them get copyrighted and I make no money. All of it goes to the artist.
Oh, so that's probably why they love it so fucking much. Is
Yeah.
because you're
Mhm.
helping them get paid,
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly. It goes all to the artist or the label that owns the music. And this no like if he ever watches this, like there's one artist specifically, his name was Christian Gates, and like cool guy, he'd always watch our videos, which was really cool, like when it came to like his songs. And he would like give us shout outs on his channels and stuff like that, which is really cool. Um, but even with his music, same thing. Like all of it's demonetized. All of it goes directly to him. And it's like it's cool. I don't mind supporting you at all. But it's also just like for me to keep doing this, I'd literally be doing this for free. Like I'd be making no money. Like and as much as I like making content, I need to survive.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so like I'm glad that we did pivot. Is essentially what I got to, and like and now I think Brandon's on a little bit of a break, um, based off of I think By the time I think this airs, I'm sure that other person's podcast might have come out.
Yeah, it might be around the same time. It
Okay.
depends on shout out to Amanda Russo.
Yeah.
We were on her podcast, my second appearance on hers, but that'll probably be, I would feel like it's gonna be after, I think. Depends, because it might release the same week. I'm
Spoiler
thinking.
alert.
I'm not sure. It's so hard to anticipate because now I backlog a little bit, not
Mm.
on purpose, but like just because people came back for the holidays and stuff. I
Yeah.
want you to move the mic a little bit forward, because
Okay.
it was
Under my neck.
yeah. It got most of it, and you sounded fine. I just wanted to get it in the right
Did it
spot.
sound extra guttural because it's in my throat?
Yeah, you were really hearing
that
that gulp, the stupid fucking like Tom and Jerry ass gulp. But I'm like really glad that you were, and this is something that we talked about. I don't know if it was on the AOHD episode. I think it was when we were talking, because I think we kind of focused a little bit more on you at that time with the mic 'em up stuff, because we hadn't
Mhm.
talked, because the AOHD stuff just kind of came to fruition at that point.
Yeah.
And we were really talking about that phrase pivot. And I've really taken that, and I've applied that to like my own life too, and like how I do things. It's like it's okay to like, excuse me, pivot on things and like take stuff that you've learned. And I think you articulated that really well in that podcast, was like things that you learned from Mike 'em Up helped you in the creation, and obviously to this point the success of AOHD was going through that process, trying to do a little bit of podcasting, interviewing, and going through the production. Obviously you've experience in this stuff, but to do it that way and do it
Only in
on
the
yourself.
audio.
Really.
I-
So a
I-
lot of that visual stuff came like
From Mic 'em Up.
Really?
All of the visual stuff I learned in the last year. Everything that I have learned when it comes to camera work has just been like me learning this last year. Because audio is what I went to school for. But
oh yeah. So I mean that's probably an easier turn though to have that somewhat of background knowledge, 'cause that is a
Yeah.
really important knowledge, especially when it turns into the content and recording and
Mm-hmm.
dabbling a little bit within like the cameras and stuff. Once you start getting to audio, cameras come right after that.
yeah.
And there's probably a good thing that you got the experience of producing a lot of ever changing vibe to help you with production and getting that space to kind of use as your own like creative canvas in a sense to kind of paint that picture the way that content went. And I always get a ton of people that I hear complimenting that studio, and between you and Brandon, you guys really did a great job with that podcast and that studio. And it's, I mean, the visuals are fucking, it's like top notch.
That that's all Brandon. Like camera work can only do so much, you know. Like you got to work with what you got. Like it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, I can have a nice camera, I can set up the camera really well, but if you're in an area that isn't visually appealing, it's not gonna look better because you have a good camera or that you set it up in a certain way. You kind of have to have the right visuals for whatever background that you're using. And so that whole background, I give 100% to Brandon.
Yeah, he put a lot of effort into that. I
Mhm.
remember even just like when I was there in the beginning days where we didn't have any backdrop. He's the one that influenced even me getting this
This one?
backdrop. And I remember he had like the dark, ever changing vibe building backdrop that he had, and to develop it into so many different iterations of what that podcast became. It's a huge shout out to him for investing into that, and a huge shout out to you for coming on and helping with the technology aspect of things. Because like I remember he was asking me a ton of questions too in the beginning. I'm like, bro, I barely fucking know how to do this shit either. I hit start and go on the stuff and just like rock, and that's why that led to today where I was like, yo, man, yeah, can you help me a little bit too? Because like I am hitting that wall in terms of what this visual stuff is doing for me, and I just like I need that expertise, and I think that's a good point, is knowing when to ask for help on things.
Yeah. Because it's just like sometimes too, it's like, for example, I feel like if I had just come to help you randomly, right, before you were ready, sometimes that can be a little bit of a detriment because it's like maybe you weren't ready to grow, maybe you weren't ready to change, right? But the fact that you came to me to change, right, now it's like, now you're ready to grow, now you're ready to take the next step. So that way you're not tripping over each step when you're going up. You're not missing something while you're going up. Because like that happens sometimes, even to me still, where it's just like I'm just improving, and then I'm learning like, oh, I didn't learn that part. I missed that. So now I got to go back, and now I got to, check that all over again. So
Yes, taking that step back, I've referenced on different podcasts, and being willing to take that step back to be like, all right, like you said, did I skip a few steps here? Did
mhm,
I get to this place without doing all the stuff I should have done prior to this? Like a
yeah,
lot of this stuff, I just bought cameras, hit record, and rocked, and like it works. But in terms of like you see like competition around you in terms of other podcasts, like there's room to grow there. And like I've known that, and I felt the need to try to at least learn about the equipment and have someone who knows about this process to get in. And obviously we were just also here for a little bit of the hangout too. We hadn't seen each other in a long time to
Yeah.
catch up on a lot of the stuff. And I think that's always super important. And I think that's probably one of the cool aspects of what AOHD was, especially early on when you started pivoting to stuff that you guys actually like, was you're hanging out, making content about stuff you actually enjoy. And I think that was probably a cool part of doing that.
Because then it becomes genuine,
Yeah,
right? Because people love genuine. So like, even if it's like, of course, like the quality and the production definitely help, right? Like, everyone, as much as they'd like to say that they don't judge a book by its cover, are gonna judge a book by its cover. So it's like, of course, that's one of those things, and then the genuine thing keeps them around.
Yeah, absolutely. I always agree with that too. Is the fact of people say they don't judge, and this is something actually I think I was on my first appearance on Amanda's podcast that we talked about the judgment of people. Like it's human nature to judge. Like
Yes.
we can't erase that part as much as we want to say we don't judge what other people do. Like if someone falls in public and you're just drinking your coffee, the instinct's probably going to be laugh if they didn't hurt themselves. Like it's
Yeah.
funny. Like you're judging them because they did something.
Because they were being clumsy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not right or wrong. It's just part of nature. Or if you're looking in terms of competition of sports, you're judging athletes. Even if you're just watching athletes, if you're watching podcasters or a comedian, you're judging those comedians on the content that they're producing.
If you have a favorite anything, especially when it comes to people, you've judged. Like, you had to figure out how you got to your favorite. Why are they your favorite over this person or this person or this person? So everybody judges.
Yeah, it's the process of going through what do you value, what's funnier to you, what's could be like a better, stronger athlete in terms of that. It's all judgment based.
Yeah, even cutting people out of your life. Like those people that like you realize like they're negative in my life. Like you have to make that judgment call of just being like, I need to cut them off. Like this is only going to hurt me if I keep them around. This is only going to hold me back if I keep this person around. So sometimes you got to make that call. Yeah,
it goes into that builds off like the self-awareness aspect of where you want to go in your life as well, and knowing how to surround yourself with the right people. And I think we've done a really great job of creating a network between us and a lot of people that we've, for the most part, intertwined into our group and introduced to each other's podcasts and different content and collab with different people. We've created a group of people that really embody like the support aspect of things, and also add to the like competitive side of things too. Cause like, obviously I see what you do with AOHT, and I see what like Eli does with his podcast, the Spawncast podcast, and obviously Brandon with the Ever Changing Vibe. And I see all you guys doing different things, and the competitive side of me is like, damn, I gotta keep doing this. I gotta get better. I see you getting the monetization. I'm like, damn, I gotta like somehow figure out how to way to like improve my content, whether it's just this podcast or something else. Like it's gotta keep growing. And
I've given you some ideas.
Yeah, and those seeds have been planted.
Take 'em.
The seeds have been planted. Like they're definitely there. And like I think even like talking to you off air, and like I always reference the project that I'm working. And I kind of like not talked about it publicly, obviously, for when I release it, it's going to be released.
Yeah.
But a lot of that was inspired by when I went to the Ever Changing Vibe studio with you and Brandon, and we talked about like legacy and like even just off air about growing the stuff and growing the content, and how you guys were having success in AOHD and he was having success with growing the Wally channel. And I was like, what can I do to like do more? And for me, I found something that I've thought about before, a seed that was planted earlier. I had revisited, I had the tools at this point to nurture that, have the fertilizer, I got the water, and I appropriately tackled that. And now I'm rolling with it. And I think it takes sometimes that seed being planted, whether it's by a friend, a loved one, whoever it may be, to help you on your journey, but you have to be willing to take that on to the next thing, like what we kind of talked about. Like if you came here and just did all the cameras for me beforehand, I might have been like, damn, like maybe I'm just not good at this. Maybe take it as a slight, or even, and I might not even like it. Maybe I just go back to what I do and just like say, fuck it, I don't want to do it that way, and just get all like pissy about it. But instead, you allowed the space for me to be ready for it, to reach out to you and set this up. And now going to be looking back on these episodes and be like, damn, I should have reached out to him sooner. And it's always something like that too, on top of it.
I've been there with my own shit. Like there's so many times where like with my own stuff, I'll be sitting there like, oh damn, I should have been doing this so long ago, or I should have been trying this part out so long ago. Um, and there's so many times where I'm just like, oh fuck. Oh wait, I can swear, right? Oh,
Absolutely.
okay, cool. I forgot. But there'll be so many times where I'll go back and I'll be like, this is so bad. I'm embarrassed to see this, but it's also a part of me that's just like, it's nice to see how much I improved. Like going back sometimes, like I actually did this. I want to say it was like a month or two ago, where I went back and I was looking at all of the beginning of like AOHD, and just kind of seeing where I started, and then how even back then Brandon was like, "Oh yeah, you're really good at this," and me watching it now, I was just like, "I was shit," like you know. But getting like to the point where I'm at now, where I'm like, I feel confident in what I do. But even now, I know that when I get to my next level, I'm gonna look back at this point and be like, "That was shit," because it's just like it's just that enjoyment of like that growth, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I was showing you some of the old podcasts, and I even like, I mean, I knew they were just like, holy shit. But like,
Mhm.
part of that journey was just to record because prior I wasn't recording podcasts. Well, so the goal wasn't a visually like aesthetic podcast. The goal was to get it on YouTube. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not, this is where I think I might have differed in maybe yours or Brandon's approach, where it wasn't so much of like, I need to perfect this before I post this. I was like, I just need to post this and
Mm.
like getting it out there and doing the thing. I'm very like, I need to start. Like I just got to keep like doing it little by little. And obviously sometimes you get caught up with the day to day or week to week. You're just doing the same thing, doing the same thing, doing the same thing. Like fuck, I should have changed just like a long time ago. But for me, it's the incremental steps like we're talking about earlier. You got to take the appropriate steps to make sure you climb all the stairs all the way to the top. You don't fall down. Because if you fall down, you don't want to fall all the way down to the bottom of the stairs. Like that's what you don't want. And if you do, it's okay. You just got to climb those stairs again.
Mhm.
But to avoid that, you got to appropriately make sure there's nothing on each step. You got to take that step and move forward with the content, with the progress in the gym, with whatever you're trying to pursue with it, with anything that you're doing. And I think your story between making the content with Mike 'em Up to AOHD is something to be admired because you've really taken something that you were passionate in the beginning about, you were excited to start the process of doing the podcast,
Mhm.
and you learned the skills, but you also learned that, hey, maybe this podcast isn't what I actually want to do, and turning into AOHD and then now getting monetized. Talk to me a little bit about the process of monetization for the people that might not know how to do that.
Well, I can't necessarily talk about it on in terms of like say TikTok or
We'll
Instagram,
stick
but
with
like with
YouTube.
YouTube,
Yeah.
right? Well, first off, you need like the 1,000 hours, right? Like of in 1,000 hours. I'm sorry, 1,000 subscribers, and then you need the 4,000 hours of watch time. Now, I'll be straight up, like my 4,000 hours of watch time was made long before I even got to the 1,000 subscribers. It was just like, which is essentially the easier part to do because just like people are gonna watch it, and as long as your videos aren't like a minute long, like you're gonna get that 4,000 hours pretty quickly. Like, for me, it was just like, okay, cool, cool, cool. Um, but the thing is, it's just like when you're trying to get monetized, there's like if that's your goal, like if your goal is to like become like a content creator or make that your job, which is kind of like my goal, and kind of like it is my goal. But you have to pay attention to a lot of the things that you're doing, right? So if you create your content, because you can see the analytics, and I can even show you or whatever. But it's like when you're looking at your analytics, especially when you put out your video, you can start to see like, okay, how many people watch this video, and it's just like it's gonna probably start out small, right? Which is fine. But like as you continue to grow, and if you're not seeing those numbers grow consistently, then you're doing something wrong, right? Then you go back to like, okay, how much are people watching? So like you go to your video and you see the watch time. Are people watching the whole video or most of the video? Or are they watching like the first 2, 3 minutes and then just clicking out, right? If they're doing that, what stopped them in that 2 or 3 minutes? What are you doing that's making them not be entertained or bored or just making them click off within that 2 or 3 minutes, especially like the end of that, like wherever that peak begins to drop, right? Find that point, because it's just like because it'll show you like, oh, this is where people start clicking off, or this is where people start like losing interest, right? On the actual timeline. I don't know if you've seen that on your YouTube at all.
No, I don't
Oh,
even look at the analytics, to be honest with you.
oh, I see. That was one of the things early on I started to look at. So it's just like, oh, okay, when I do this, in my video, like then this is what's actually fucking with my audience. This is the thing that's like people don't like this. People are getting disinterested. If I do an intro that's too long, people aren't here for me yet. So people are just clicking off, right? People are just like leaving or skipping to another part of the video, and I'll see that's where the next peak will be, you know? And it's just like, oh, okay. Well, now I know that. Or even sometimes, and one of the other things with like the music, for example, people would just skip all of my commentary. They would just want to watch the video, and it's just like, well, I want to I want you to come for me, not for the song. Why are you watching the song on my video? Go watch the song, you know. It's just so like find also what's holding that audience, what's bringing your audience, and what's holding that audience, and are they coming for you, or are they coming for the thing that you're talking about, right? So find your niche, find the thing that you like, and find your person. And one of the things that like I learned early on with the Mic 'em Up is that like I wasn't being me when I was doing Mic 'em Up. I was trying to find this host mentality, this like uh what's it called, Sean Evans from Hot Ones, where I had all this information that I definitely didn't have, or I wanted to be like a Nardwar or something like that, somebody that like was like a great interviewer, or I'd watched these like comedian podcasts like Flagrant or fucking I never really watched Two Bears One Cave, but like as an example, and I'd be like, that's how I have to be, right? And so I almost am like trying to put on this persona of the people that I enjoy, and then I realized that like I didn't like it because it was hard to be someone who I wasn't. And it wasn't until like transferred over to AOHD and we got like a little bit into it, and I started getting comfortable again behind that camera, when I just started to just be myself, that I realized that like this is when people are starting to come even more, because people are enjoying me a little bit more. I'm enjoying me a little bit more on camera. I don't feel as uncomfortable watching me talk on camera anymore, and it's because I'm just being myself. And I think that's one of the bigger things that I also had to learn. It's just like, if you put on a persona, sometimes you're going to get drained. That's going to make you get overwhelmed. That's going to make you get burnout very quickly. Um, so that was something else I had to learn. But yeah, once you kind of like find that, like, and combine those things, like between like finding your audience, figuring out what may turn off that audience, and making sure that that audience is still constantly growing. That's what's going to help you get like those subscribers and what's it called, and the watch hours, especially the watch hours. I will say the subscribers, something I learned towards the end of the game. Ask for them. Ask for the subscribers, because that's the times when I noticed the biggest spikes in subscribers, is when I straight up was like, "Hey, subscribe, please," or like made a funny way to ask about like subscribers. We had huge boosts in that subscriber count. So, and it was because the way I was doing it was not only genuine, but it was also just like, sometimes people just don't subscribe. Sometimes people are just like I know that I do. Like, I'll watch a content creator. I have content creators now that I watch every time they post something, and I still haven't subscribed. And it's just like, I just know that I like watching their content.
Yeah, it's hard to get the follow, the subscriber these days. And
Mm-hmm.
I really noticed that even when I was really in my TikTok phase, was at first it was one of the easiest apps to gain a following. And then it became like every other social media where no one wants to follow anyone. They just want to like, it's even hard to get a like these days for a lot of stuff too, on top of that. But I think the point you're really hitting to, that I think that's really good, is the genuine aspect of the content that you're creating. And it's finding who you are in the content, but also making sure that person is actually you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I definitely had to figure out with this podcast early on was, is this me, or am I an iteration of Joe Rogan? Am I copying him? And then I kind of realized this is just something I actually do like doing. Like, talking to people on this level is exactly how I talk to you off podcast. And for me, that's how I knew I was sticking to what I was doing. I wasn't trying to be Joe Rogan. I was using his template for sure,
Right.
but I figured out how to turn it and make it something that meant something to me, and using the basis of mental health and things like that to kind of push out a message that was more positive. It was always trying to get back to talking to people on a real level. And that is something that within the last year, year and a half, I've really dove back into. And I know I've talked to you about that too. And I mean, it's also shout out to my girlfriend for helping me kind of get back into my person. And she allows me to just be. She loves me for me, and she supports me in this passion. And I think having that person in your side, especially that romantic side of it, really allows you to kind of enter that creative phase a little bit more organically and a little bit more authentically,
Mm,
because a lot of the content, especially in the TikTok, was definitely attention oriented for sure. Some of it's coping it, some of it was actually me making content for sure. But there is the ego wanting the attention. There is the ego wanted the followers. And you got to quickly decipher. And you might not decipher in the moment. You might have to take a year, 2, 3 years after the fact to realize, Dan, that phase wasn't actually because I liked that content. It was because I wanted to grow and get famous and get followers.
mm,
Like there is that side of content that a lot of us get caught up into. But I think if you, for the most part, if you stick to your guns in the terms of making sure you actually enjoy what you do, and if there's a path, especially for like what you do, there's a clear cut path for you to make this monetized and make a career out of this.
exactly.
And it's like I know for me there's a ceiling to this. I definitely see the monetization ceiling in terms of keeping it the way that I have, but I've also openly have always said this is just something that I really enjoy doing, and if it became that, great. But
Mhm.
I think you have a great path for this, and I think you have a great template in the way you talk about this as well.
Yeah, because and like, going back to what you were just talking about, where it's like you're doing it for attention, right? And it's like, can you get big and do this because you want it for attention? Yes, but I can promise you, you're not going to be able to sustain it long term, or you're going to fuck up somewhere. You're going to be like, those people that run into controversies because now you're just being egotistical. And don't get me wrong, it's okay to be a little bit egotistical with content creation. Like, for example, there is a bit of me that like has an ego to my content, right? Like, I do feel like, oh, I'm pretty good at this, right? And I enjoy when people like compliment me. But the other side of it is just like I just enjoy making people happy. Like that is just like my personality. Like I enjoy making people laugh, like all this other stuff. I was actually just talking about this the other day where it's just like sometimes I have to be aware of like what's going on with myself. Like say if you were to come to me, right? And you're sad, you're down, you're crying or something like that. Like there's this part of me that like almost becomes a sponge and like starts soaking up that emotion. And like it is like this empathic side of me that it's just like I automatically start relating to you so that I can understand your emotions so I can not match you and just cry also because that doesn't help. But it's more of just like I want to understand your pain and understand what's going on. Like that's why I'll ask people like what's going on, and I'll let them rant, I'll let them vent, I'll let them talk, and it's because I want to understand that aspect, so that way I can almost help them out of there. Right? It's like I want to be able to feel it to figure out a way to help them out of that zone, and it sometimes it sucks. Sometimes I'll be a sponge and I'll just be stuck in that mode for the rest of the day. I may have helped that person out, but I've soaked it all up, and now I'm just sad. Like, so sometimes it's not helpful, but there's that part of me that's like and the only reason I do that is because I enjoy making people happy. I enjoy like say you are that sad or you are angry, like me eventually making you break and you got that smile on your face or you're laughing now, like and we're having a good time, and, and that thank you afterwards is like the most fulfilling thank you that I like that I strive for that, right? So like when I make content and stuff like that and I do like the content creation or I get creative and do these fun things that I personally enjoy. It's not only because that I enjoy them, like it is like a hobby I do love doing, but it's also like when I see those comments and they're just talking about that thing, it makes me happy. It makes me happy to see that people really laughed or really enjoy it and stuff like that. And I have people that will like say those kind of things all the time. Um, and I think that's where my purpose lies. It's like my purpose isn't to like, be political and have like a take on something. Or my purpose isn't to, you know, fight this war for you, right? Or my purpose isn't to be the best chef in the world, right? My purpose, I feel like, is to make people smile. My purpose is to make people happy. And that's where I find the most happiness. And that's why I like to make content.
Yeah, and I think finding that purpose, aligning it with something positive like that, I think is the best way to achieve what you ultimately want to achieve in life. And building off that concept of you have to be a little bit egotistical with content. Like
Yeah.
it takes a little bit of an ego to post content. Like you have to have something, and it goes into this concept where it gets very dicey with narcissism.
Hmm.
And I have kind of come to the conclusion, and just some of the stuff that I've read, that on some level we all have a bit of narcissism in us, because I think it's a survival technique. You gotta care about yourself a little bit. If you don't care about yourself at all, I'm gonna judge you and probably like, there's something wrong with this person. They probably want to use me in some term of fashion. If they don't care about themselves at all, there's something wrong there.
I wouldn't say that. Sometimes I feel like if somebody's doing that, like I'm sure that could be an aspect, but like my first thought goes to you have no confidence in yourself, and you're trying to find happiness through others, and like that's not healthy for you.
Well, that's
Because
also something being
now
wrong, though,
yeah,
technically.
it is being wrong, but you're just gonna be dependent.
Yeah, yeah, true.
For example, one of the reasons like I would never date a girl that's like a dependent, like I want an independent girl, is because I don't want her to latch on to me and like I am her everything. Because like not only is that scary, but like once I leave, if I were to leave, right? That girl's broken. Like that girl is destroyed. I don't want to leave destroying somebody. That's fucked. So like that's why like for me I wouldn't fuck with somebody that feels that dependent.
Yeah, and I think this actually builds off of a concept that I talked a little bit about on episode 166 with my buddy Nick, was the concept of individualism.
Hmm.
And America has really, really pushed individualism, and I think it's good. I think it's allowed for really creative aspects of life to really flourish, and we have a lot of great technologies and great arts because of it. But I also think it's allowed for some breeding of very narcissistic behavior where it becomes a lot of selfishness about me. And I've definitely done this in my life too, where a lot of early days in the podcast where I was figuring out a lot of my feelings, it became, I'm going to feel my feelings. I don't care about what you're feeling. This is how I feel. And you see that on social media every here and there where someone's just talking about something and they're completely ignoring how other people feel about the situation, but they're really just giving their perspective, and it's really driven by their ego and like that narcissistic behavior. And I think there needs to be almost like a switch to this more community based, where we care about our neighbors, we care about our friends, we care about our family, and it's less about the individual and more about us as a collective and us achieving something positive.
Hmm.
And that's what moves society forward, not me being the best me that I could be so I could post podcasts. That's not going to
Yeah,
always help everything. It's me connecting with you, checking how you're doing and your podcast or your content, your AOHD content, and talking to you on the person. How's your job going? How's your dating life going? How are these things in your life going? Because that stuff matters to you as a person. And as someone that cares about you, that also has to matter to me if I'm a good friend. And
exactly.
go ahead. Yeah.
And like I was gonna say, like even when it comes to like the content side, it's just like that competitive thing that we were talking about earlier. It's just like for me at least, that's what keeps me going. Similar to how you're just like, how can I improve? How can I do better? And it's just like I love when I have like the people around me that are constantly driven, but like I also love when we're all helping each other out. Because it's just like when you find a community where it's like you guys are all driven and you guys are all helping each other out, you'll all grow. You know, you'll all be happy. And I think that's actually too what people say is like the key to living a long life is having like some type of purpose. So like the people that they find living the longest lives are people that feel like they have their community and they serve a purpose in their community.
Yeah, I think it goes because I think that's how it's always kind of been. It just, for some reason, I would say maybe in the last, definitely the last 10 to 15 years with the internet and social media, we've taken that real harsh turn towards the individual. And I've had these conversations where it's almost like this loss of faith and spirituality too that's missing
Mm,
from society, that I think causes that divide between communities and increases that individualism in our culture,
mhm.
where we don't collectively all agree on something. And I think finding that community for yourself that all believe in something, hopefully it's something positive, hopefully it's something towards like moving society forward, but having the people that believe in things that you also believe goes into what you're saying. It does increase longevity in life. And I've, in terms of my project, there's some of this information that I've actually come across of these relationships that we have do push us forward with our health, do help our mental health, and they're all positive things. I've definitely seen a positive correlation between doing this podcast and my own mental health, because I'm having genuine conversations with people that I actually want to talk to, like pretty much every time. And sometimes you get an episode that's not, you don't connect with someone on the best level, but that's also good to
Life
have
too.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny too, like I was just kind of thinking about it. because I know that you were talking about where it's just like that community almost gets because of like this internet age, it's like so dispersed now, right? Where it's just like not everyone's agreeing with everything. Um, but I also feel like it's also opened doors to other things, right? So, and I've had this conversation with somebody before, but it's just like, for an example, anime, right? Growing up, 9 out of 10 people in my community just like, if you watch anime, you're a fucking nerd. You suck. So, which is a comment I heard plenty, right? And so it's just like, yeah, you find your occasional like anime fan that like has been secretly an anime fan because they didn't want to get bullied by everybody else. But it's just like, you have your community, like the small one. But because now with the internet age, it's so expanded, there's so many more, and now it's just way more accepted, and now it's easier to find a community of people that will like that thing, right? So it's just like, as at the same time that the internet community has like dispersed the individual, like the interpersonal, like like here in person, real life, like, oh yeah, the people around me don't always agree with me. It also opened doors to being like, I can have like these online communities or like this Discord channel or this thing that like we all relate, or like this type of content where like all the fans in here and the creators, we all enjoy this one thing, or we all talk about this one thing. And it's like this weird juxtaposition of just like, it did damage things, but it also created new things.
Yeah, it's this double-edged sword almost. And I've always said this about social media, it is a tool for communication, it shouldn't be the only avenue for communication. I said
Mm.
that very early in this podcast. And when I thought about that, it was because I was able to connect with a lot of great people through social media that I'm very grateful for. I mean, hence in point, the fact that I went to school with Brandon, but we got connected through content.
Mhm.
And who knows if that ever happens if we don't have this technology to do content. And that opens the door for great connections and great relationships. My fear is that those online communities become the only communities that these people are part of. And maybe AI and virtual reality helps bridge that gap and helps some type of um, connections in the brain feel like it's more in person and real. Because I think there is a thing to be said about having conversations in person, seeing the eye contact, feeling the energy in the room, and like being able to like dap someone up or hug them and just feel that connection with them. I think there is something to that that is important for humans, but I do also agree that the online communities have opened up these doors to stuff that's really beautiful and to wide varieties of different people that you would never even knew existed. And we live in a time that's allowed for this. And I think that's like really fucking cool because when I look at my TikTok stuff, to go back to this content discussion, when I started posting recently again, a lot of the people that I made good relationships with and followed and talked to in lives came back and were in support of the fact that like I was in a relationship. I was like happy, and they were like I knew your time would come. I was so happy for you, and like
Same.
just to, like
I was definitely one of those people.
yeah, but it's just like to see like obviously we're here, we're real, we're in person, but to also see those online community come back
Say the
and
same.
say the same thing, and kind of realize like they're real people too. Like
Hmm.
that is the distinction that we lose with social media. We just sometimes see them, and I said this recently, we sometimes see people as people on a screen and not real people.
Hmm.
And I think hopefully with AI, it's a positive experience. Hopefully VR, it's a positive experience. But bridging that gap and having those connections, and maybe it becomes like those communities have like I've seen online creators do like meet and greets and all this other stuff. We get to meet your communities, and like I think that stuff is really cool. And I think the trajectory that you're on with your content and just the way that you approach your stuff, I think I easily think that you're gonna accomplish those goals where you're gonna have those communities that lift you into those spaces where you could do that if you wanted to. And I want to kind of gear this towards asking you, what do you see for the future of AOHD? How do you see this progressing? What type of content is going to bridge off from this? Like, what's to come from you and your content?
Well, what's it called? I'm actually already recording like my own solo stuff, where it's just me exploring a different avenue. Uh, I don't want to like say it out loud just yet, but it's just like it is going to be more of like a me like trying out different things, and it is, and it's going to be like fun because I'm having fun with it, I think. Some people may not enjoy it, but I think it is going to be a little bit more of like a fun style, and it's going to be a lot different from like that reaction style, because it's not a reaction in any way, shape, or form. It's not even like reacting to content or talking about content. Um, but so it'll be different, but that is like my goal for like my side stuff. As for and I think depending on what happens with AOHD, like whether the break with Brandon it is more of like an indefinite thing, or if whenever he decides to come back, like that one too, it's like I already have a couple plans for that one to grow even past just like the reactions and the few commentary things here and there. Like I have plans for that as well if that does continue. But if it doesn't, I also have plans for what happens if it doesn't. Does that make sense? Like, or it's just like, uh, and I like for example, like this one's not really like a spoiler thing, but like say if Brandon's just like, I think I'm gonna move on from content. It's like, okay, cool. Well, this will become the nerdy channel, right? Like that'll become like my nerdy outlet where I talk about like nerdy stuff, right? Because it's like that's kind of the community that's already there. They enjoy that kind of stuff. So that might become what that is. Um, but if he does stay there, like maybe we'll explore other styles of nerdy things. Like not just watching and reacting to content, but like, okay, I'm gonna take you to a fucking Comic-Con or something like that. Like you're gonna go full nerd for a second, you know. So doing stuff like that, where it's just like now you're not even just coming for the what's it called? You're not coming for just the reactions. You're coming specifically for us, so that would be more of like my step up from like AOHD if that continues. And for my stuff, it's like it is completely separate. It's a completely different outlet, and it's something that I want to try and see if it's something that I enjoy doing. You know, so it'll be fun to see how that goes.
Yeah, how do you take on the task of embarking on this journey of like kind of just almost doing it a little bit solo? Like how do you feel in the term of like that you might have to like just make the content yourself? Like is that scary at all? Is that different at all? Like cuz I know
Mhm.
you obviously were doing a little bit with Mike 'em up, but like in terms of what you're doing now, it's you gonna have the AOHD, it's you and Brandon.
Mhm.
So how do you feel about going forward by doing it yourself?
It is a little bit scary. Don't get me wrong, because it's just like I literally built the channel on like, and even with Mike 'em up, it was still interview based. I was never there solo, right? So it's just like it's never like full attention on me, and it's like I'm giving the attention to other people and creating the content based off of that, right? And yes, like towards the end between Wally and I, like yes, essentially the content was me showing him Dragon Ball, but it's just like it became an us thing because of our dynamic rather than just a me and Brandon thing, just a Brandon thing, right? So this will be kind of like the first time I like take a step out and just do it by myself. But I'm also at this point where, like, even though, like I said, it is scary, and don't get me wrong, I have pushed this video off for so long. Like, and I've even brought it up in the video as like part of a bit where it's just like I started recording this stuff in the summer, like, and then I got bummed out by something. It was like I think I lost some bits of the content, like from the videos, from a corrupt hard drive, and I got disappointed. Dropped it. Started it again towards like December, and then just like lost track of time and wasn't going to upload based off of how I was writing the video and wrote the script for the video. Scrapped it. So this time I'm just like I'm putting it out, but in a different way, and I'll tell you more off air about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, we can keep that
Um,
off air.
yeah, but it's like so it is like one of those things where I'm excited for it, but of course, anything new is going to be scary. It's I don't sometimes I feel like it's not worth it if it's not. If you think that it's not scary or you're not almost intimidated to try and do something new, then is are you really doing anything that's going to push you? Are you going to grow from this? Are you going to, is this anything that's going to be interesting? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
that makes sense. It's you kind of have to challenge yourself in that way, and like that's why I felt like I had to embark on this journey with my project
mhm,
because I felt like I had, for the most part, accomplished what I need to accomplish in this podcast. I've created a platform that I enjoy doing, and this is something that I'm going to keep doing for as long as I can. And but I need something new to kind of conquer almost, and
mhm,
you have to like forcibly put those obstacles in front of you, because by default as humans we're going to try to go the easy way. We're going to try to avoid to do the uncomfortable thing, cuz like who the fuck wants to do that? I want to just go chill on my couch, play Fortnite, eating Taco Bell. Like that's what I want to do, but that's not what I should be doing. I should go to the gym. I should work on my podcast. I should work on my project. This is the stuff that I'll do because this is going to make me more fulfilled. That stuff is just temporary satisfaction. It's just a little bit of dopamine that's going to make me feel good for now. And then by the end of it, I'm like, damn, I did fucking nothing. And I'm going to end up in the same position that I was before I ever had a podcast. And you don't want to be in that place where you're wondering, what's my purpose? What am I doing here? Am I doing anything of value? Because that's a scary fucking place to be. I've
Mhm.
been there. I imagine you've probably been there before embarking on anything in terms of your content.
Oh,
You
of
kind of
course.
just, you look, you're just like, what the fuck?
Sometimes I'll look and be like, am I even good at this? And then I'll get like this full on imposter syndrome and then just like want to like almost quit, but then just decide, no, I've honestly spent way too much money. But but it's also just like, this is where I put a lot of my stats. It's like, grow on this. And I also know that like, especially for me and talking about mental health, like my ADHD, that is like something that's just like sometimes when I overthink, that just happens. Like I'll sometimes overthink into a subject so far that I've put myself into a mode that I was never in to begin with. Sometimes I'll put myself in a depressive mode because I was just thinking about depression for too long, or I was listening to this one song and I put myself in that person's shoes, or I was watching this movie and now I've put myself in that main character's role and really started feeling that emotion. And now I'm just sad. Like, so, and I think it is that whole ADHD thing, according to like the therapist that I had at one point explaining that stuff to me. So it is one of those things where I've been there, but it's one of those things you kind of also have to just push through because it is a temporary feeling. At least for me, it has been a
Yeah,
temporary feeling
I
where it's
would
just
agree. It's temporary feeling in
yeah.
terms of that.
Mhm.
And it's like, you have to just, I was talking this on this concept on Amanda's podcast, of letting go of how things are going to happen. Like
Mhm.
you might have envisioned that you were going to get monetization on such and such video doing such and such thing, and it's going to happen in this month. And you're hyper fixated on that, and that month comes and it doesn't happen. You got to let go of how things are going to happen. If you're
Mhm.
doing what you're supposed to, it's eventually going to happen. And if you allow that space for it to kind of manifest, for things to just work the way they're supposed to, and receive when it happens, because it might happen in a way that you don't expect it to happen, but if you allow that to still come in, you're going to get what you actually ultimately wanted in the beginning, was to have a monetized, Jesus Christ, monetized podcast, Jesus, monetized YouTube channel.
Welcome to the club, dude. I haven't
Eh,
been able to speak
This
well
has
this
been
whole time.
it's been a tough one. It's been a tough one.
I also went to bed at 3 though.
Yeah, I woke up at like 4 and like had to stay up an extra hour because I couldn't go back to sleep and
Get
scroll
wrecked.
TikTok.
All
Yeah,
right. So we're in the same.
yeah,
boat.
same boat. A little tired,
Mhm.
but you have to just allow things to be, and I think that's the overall point of how you achieve things. And also, you have to make sure it's a double like balancing act here of like, let things happen, but also do the damn thing.
Mm.
Like you wouldn't have gotten to where you got if you just sat there and just like, oh, I'm just gonna post a video and just chill and edit a little bit and just not tag it, not do thumbnails. Like, no, you're like, I know what it takes to get to the level that I want to. I have to do this way.
Mhm.
And you did it repeatedly over and over, and it goes into the consistency aspect, because eventually over time, if you keep doing this, it goes into, we've talked about this before on this podcast, me and you privately, with Brandon, with Eli, the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours will always hold true, because eventually you succeed. It's might not happen today, might not happen tomorrow, but eventually. And if you're patient enough for the eventually, everything is in like your grasp. You just got to be patient for it, because we're all on different journeys. We're all living different lives. You're gonna achieve stuff that maybe I'll achieve in 2-3 years. Maybe I achieve something that it comes up in the next year that you takes you 3-4 years. Like it, we're all
Mhm.
on different journeys and how we achieve things. You just have to be open to the possibilities of life and letting things kind of just be. I
Mhm.
want to start taking us home on this podcast and start wrapping things up and tying things down. And one of the ways that I kind of do this when people come back, I kind of just let you have like a closing segment, whether you want to say anything in particular, whether you want to leave the people with any particular advice. I'm not going to steer you one way or the other. If you have nothing, you have nothing, but I just want to give you kind of like your closing statement for the podcast.
Heard. I have nothing. I don't really have like I don't know. Motivate yourselves. Don't look for external motivation. Like I don't know. It's just if you have external motivation, that's gonna disappear. That's gonna go away. Like if you find the internal motivation though, like you motivate yourself, you do the thing that you want to do, and you just keep it going, and you keep on your grind, you're gonna go there. You're gonna make it. That's gonna keep going. That's a sales tactic I learned a long time ago.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's just if you're constantly needing that external validation and push to do things, it's gonna burn out very quickly. Like it helps, but it's not long term and not long lasting. You got to do it within. But Gio, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, sitting down with me, helping me with some of these cameras. One of them didn't make it all the way, but it's totally fine.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, I knew it was. We left it on a little bit too long. I might have to order a new battery, but it got like 40 minutes in, so it was fine.
Just get a dummy battery.
Yeah, I got to do that. But I just appreciate you coming to the studio and sitting down with me and doing another podcast. I always appreciate catching up with you. So
Of course, man. Anytime.
yeah, we'll do this again. So for you guys, if you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your grandma. Check it out at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you want to go on YouTube and watch the podcast, search Jared M. Carroll or The Carroll Connection. Should pop up for you. And again, if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at The Carroll Connection, and we'll do that. So, till next time, guys, peace.